All righty. I've just finished a podcast episode with Steve about artificial intelligence. If you're watching this on YouTube, which presumably you are, then you can check that out on our YouTube channel. Search Pro Extinction on YouTube and go to live. I've also put out a few videos today, as you may or may not have seen. I've put out around 4 videos on TikTok. So what are we doing in this stream? We're going to do what we normally do and debate some people. So if anybody has questions or is curious, then the button is there for you. Come onto the stream and let's have a conversation. So while we're waiting for someone to join and to request to join so that we can have a chat, let's talk about extinctionism, right? Why not? But anyone that does want to join, the button's right there. So ending suffering is our priority. Why is it our priority? Because it's extremely terrible, right? If we want to have a fair world, then obviously we have to care about suffering, and we should prioritize it because it's the worst thing. Okay, we've already got someone joining us. Let's dive in. Hello.
Shut up.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, Mbappe. A pleasure as always. So, yeah, a lot of people kind of see extinctionism and try to understand it with a selfish perspective. And it's that same selfish perspective that leads people to value antinatalism, for example. Because antinatalism is really, it's just a selfish ideology that says you don't have to do anything, just don't have kids. And usually it's actually people that just don't want to have kids who claim they're an antinatalist. There's nothing serious about the antinatalism position or nothing morally consistent about it. It doesn't actually make sense. So, you know, unless you're doing it because you just don't like children, right? Then you're doing it because, you don't want your child to suffer? Then nobody should have to suffer if that's the reason you're doing it, right? Why would you be against some suffering and not all suffering? So somebody's asking, what do you mean by total extinction? So, yeah, thank you for the questions, guys. I'll answer that now. So in total extinction, basically, that is what the pro-extinction movement is working to achieve as the way to end all suffering. So if you try to cure every disease, cure every mental illness, etc., it's going to take a very long time, and it's effectively an infinite and impossible task. Whereas animal extinction is something that we can already do. We've already made several species of animals go extinct. And, you know, they don't need to exist. Sure, they're interesting and everything, but are they okay? You know, that's the real question. And the answer is no. Animals are not okay. They suffer in the worst conditions and have the worst suffering. They don't deserve it. Nobody asks to be born into a horrible life of suffering. So it's the worst thing that could happen. And causing animal extinction is the best way to end suffering, to prevent suffering. It's the most effective way to deal with suffering. So it's the only way that you're going to have any sort of end to the terrible thing of forced existence, right? For life forms that don't benefit from being forced to exist, because it's just the lucky ones that do, the resulting experience is horrifically terrible. And it's so shockingly bad that it just shouldn't be allowed. Okay, we're getting quite a lot of questions in the comments. I love suffering. Okay, then you're a sadist. Stop the yap. It's a live stream. Get used to it. Part of life is to suffer. Yeah, you know, suffering is a part of life, and it helps you grow as a person, sure, but only if you're in a privileged position. For the unlucky ones, life is essentially a torture device that you're trapped in, right? You're strapped into it and tortured, and it's horrific, and there's no way out apart from when the torture device decides to give you a cruel death to end it. So yeah, life is suffering. You're dead right about that. But that's a bad thing, and that's why we should stop it. So someone's asking, should people with mental health issues end their lives? No, we are against self-harm and suicide, and we're also against human extinction. Because if humanity goes extinct, then there will be no one around to make other life go extinct and to end and prevent their suffering. We have somebody joining. Hello.
How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
So you just said you didn't believe in human suffering, by the way, or like human extinction.
So we do support human extinction, but it has to be last, basically. If humanity goes extinct first, then it's unfair to the other life, which can't help itself, which doesn't have the intelligence to cause its own extinction.
So, right, let me get this straight. You want everything to die, right, and then humans, everything.
So it's not that we want everything to die, it's that we want life to stop coming about and to cease to exist, effectively. Most of the life that we want to help is in the future, so it hasn't been born into suffering yet, right? So the majority of our mission is preventing those billions of years of suffering that will continue horrifically unless we put an end to it.
Do you know how we originally came about?
Yeah, I mean, life developed on Earth, and then we evolved into intelligent beings.
Right, so we came from little particles, basically, in the sea, right? That is basically impossible to kill, right? So if we stop all
Not
life
necessarily,
on Earth,
no.
if we
ever
stop
heard
all
of
life
soap?
on Earth, it will happen on another planet.
Have you heard of
Something else will
soap?
suffer.
Have you heard of soap? Hand soap?
Have I heard of soap? Right, so you're saying soap could kill everything in the ocean?
I'm saying that soap does sterilize, right? So that's already shows that it is possible to deal with small cases of life, right? And yes, it certainly will be difficult. You're absolutely correct. It will be very challenging. It's a massive challenge.
It's not. You can't do that. It's just you can't pull that off.
No, that's you can't really say that, right? I mean, you're not a scientist. You don't sound like you are one. You're just kind of being pessimistic about it, basically, right?
You're a scientist. I'm curious.
Yeah, but the thing is, humanity has only just begun its journey into science and technology, right? So it's very arrogant and naive to say that things won't become easier and more possible as time goes on. So, there's no reason to think that we can't end suffering. And I know what you're going to say, which is an argument I get every single day, which is that life will just come back somewhere else. But even if, firstly, we want to stop that from happening, and we will try. But even if we somehow fail, it's still good to end as much suffering as you can, right? If you can only help 9 out of 10 people, then you wouldn't say, oh, forget it, I won't help anyone because of the 10th person.
Do you have any pets? I'm curious.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so humanely and in a safe environment, your pet should die, like without any pain. Is that what you believe?
We're against individual acts of euthanasia or violence because it doesn't really, it gets too messy, basically. However, I would definitely not pay for, an animal to be bred into existence so that I could have it as a pet.
But what pet do you have? Do you have like a dog or a cat?
A cat.
Right, so your cat, so it's not going to be you, it's going to be someone else.
Well, yeah.
So why don't you follow through? Why don't you let someone do that? Why don't you go with your beliefs?
Well, the thing is that animal euthanasia isn't very legal at the minute. You can't just get animals euthanized for no reason, right? Furthermore, it's not even, I don't have full ownership of this cat. So, and it wasn't even bred into existence by breeders. It was just reproduced naturally. But you are asking a good question. Would it be better off being euthanized is effectively what you're asking. And the answer is probably yes.
Right. And
Because the thing is that the safety gained from euthanasia and non-existence actually is better and more important than anything else.
But right, I'm curious. How does your cat suffer in life?
Well, animals suffer in, all sorts of different ways. But even if there's no suffering today, there could be extreme suffering tomorrow.
Okay, so your way to prevent that is to kill everything instead of find a logical, a humane way to stop things from suffering like a normal human. That's what we do.
But the thing is, that's not a realistic way, right? You're suggesting, to end all suffering without extinction is it's science fiction, basically. To cure every disease, to prevent every accident, prevent every natural disaster, prevent any emotional harm or upset, right? It's unrealistic and it's impossible. But euthanasia already exists. We can already euthanize animals. We already control animal populations to a large scale. So it's not something new. It's not a new idea. But what you're suggesting is complete fantasy and absurdity, right? You're saying that we should try and cure every last disease, turn predators into vegetarians as well. It's not realistic, whereas euthanasia, it doesn't need to be realistic. It's already real.
Right, it is real, but to a normal degree, right? So euthanasia is for animals that are suffering, right? My dog doesn't suffer. I'm not going to kill my dog for no reason. My dog should live a long,
Well, that's
happy
actually
life.
not true. Euthanasia has been used many times throughout history in order to prevent future suffering. So it's not only used to treat current suffering like you're suggesting, but it doesn't matter either way. Euthanasia isn't a bad thing. It provides safety from harm, safety from suffering, and total extinction is the only way that you can prevent future generations being forced to exist and to suffer. Right? They don't need that. They're not asking to be born into these lives. They don't want them. And, they don't deserve to suffer like that.
You didn't ask to be born into your life, but you were born into your life.
Well, that's a really interesting point in your brain, I'm sure. But I would say that is a very uninteresting point. So let's have somebody else on and get some more interesting questions going. I'm going to try and bring on Kansei, I believe their name is. In the meantime, we can take some more questions from the comments. So, is extinction a bad thing? It's really interesting. Every TV show, every film that you'll ever see, it's always, oh no, we're going to go extinct. Like, aliens are making us extinct, or the planet is becoming uninhabitable. The sun is going to blow up or something. Oh no, we're going to go extinct. Sure thing, Jack. Let's have you on. But extinction is actually a good thing. It ends and prevents horrific suffering, unlimited suffering.
Yes! James, I'm a big fan. I am a big fan of the movement. Kill everyone. Get them gone. Fuck them all. What I want to know...
So, we're not in this movement because we want to watch the world burn, like that crazy person. It's out of compassion and empathy, responsibility, doing the right thing. Okay, so if we're going to be responsible for the world, if we're going to be compassionate and fair, right? If we're going to be fair, then nobody should have to suffer so that someone else can have a good time, right? So even just on fairness alone, extinction is absolutely the right thing to do. It ends the cruel system that we have where only the lucky ones benefit from being forced to exist. And realistically, that's a very small minority anyway. The vast majority of life on the planet is wild animals, and they have the worst conditions, the worst suffering. There's no sort of pleasure that they're having, right? They're just running for their lives, suffering from parasites and being eaten alive, right? It's absolutely terrible. And most wild animals die painfully during childhood. Now, in terms of humans also suffer terribly. Humans suffer horrifically. And, people tell me all the time, oh, but, polls and, research has shown that like at least 8 out of 10 people are relatively happy, right? Doesn't that mean something? No, screw the 8 out of 10 people that are forcing the other 2 out of 10 to suffer and be tortured, right? What's it for? So that they can have some selfish, shallow pleasures at the expense of children being tortured. It's not a good thing. It's not an acceptable thing. And life existing in unsafe conditions is unacceptable. It's wrong. Most people, they see it and they think it's interesting or beautiful somehow. They watch a documentary about nature and think, wow, isn't that interesting? But they're not
This
asking
is not.
okay. Hello, how's it going?
Oh yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. How are you doing?
I don't really know where I'm not really sure what I'm doing here, but let's just have at it, will we?
Let's do it.
Well, I think like we've been given this gift. Why not enjoy it?
Because that's cruel and unfair, right? To say that, I'm okay, so everyone else deserves to suffer, right?
I suppose, but could we not give it a free? Like, let's say I was enjoying myself, but you weren't. You should maybe just be given the option to euthanize yourself. I don't know.
But that's not a realistic option for the vast majority of sufferers.
Like
Most
animals and stuff. Yeah.
Most of them are animals, and even if we're talking about humans, then children can't consent to that, babies can't opt out, mentally disabled people can't opt out, physically disabled people usually can't opt out either. So the whole you can just opt out thing, that applies to a very, very small minority of sufferers, right? So
Yeah.
It's not a realistic solution.
So are you trying to put forward that everyone should die?
So we are for total extinction, yes. However, we are against human extinction for the time being because humans are the vehicle for ending suffering for other life. So if humanity goes extinct, then nobody's going to be around to help animals and to end their suffering, right? So humanity has to go last as the ones that are capable of closing that door behind us.
Okay, so if it was up to you completely, you'd let everything else, you'd euthanize everything else, and then you would come on to us and finish us off then.
Yeah, basically. But
Well,
just to be clear, our mission and our movement is actually very large in scope. So we want animal extinction on Earth to end their suffering. But research has shown actually that the universe will most likely be full of life, suffering. So our mission at our movement is to end as much life in the universe as possible,
Oh my
prevent
God.
as much suffering as possible, to even end the universe itself if we can.
who are you?
So we are activists in the pro-extinction movement. We are against suffering, and essentially we are people that have realized that suffering is too extreme and terrible to allow, and that while it exists, or the potential for it exists, anything else other than trying to deal with that problem is selfish, basically, and cruel and immoral, right? Nobody should have to suffer anywhere. No animal should have to suffer, no human should have to suffer. And whether it's life on other planets, they also shouldn't have to suffer. So that's our priority, is dealing with suffering and ending and preventing as much suffering as physically possible. It doesn't get to a point where it's like, oh, we've done enough, those animals can screw themselves, I'm tired of helping them now. So, if we can end all suffering on Earth, then we should definitely just keep doing as much as we can and do as much of the universe as possible. Now, we might find that it's impossible to go past the galaxy or something. But we shouldn't be closed to trying and exploring and seeing how far we can take it.
So instead, so obviously suffering, we have that here. But what about all the good? So what you're saying is get rid of all the good stuff in life. You should have nothing if suffering exists. There should be a nothingness instead of all the happiness, all the love, all of the empathy,
exactly.
all of that.
So,
There shouldn't be any of that if they're suffering.
Absolutely, yeah. So
Okay, let me
actually,
pose you a hypothetical. Okay, there's two buttons. There's extinction and there's just the removal of suffering. In like nothing can suffer anymore. Would you rather let everything go extinct or just get rid of the suffering part? Like take it out of the jigsaw puzzle.
So I get asked this a lot, and if we could have, heaven, basically, then yeah, I would support that, actually. But that's not a realistic scenario. We have to stay grounded in reality. And in the real world that we live in, there's always going to be suffering, and it's not something that you can just wish away.
What about like the whole idea of yin and yang? Like I think I would prefer to have the happiness and the suffering in my life than to just be wiped clean by you.
Right, but you're speaking from a position of privilege, right? You're not a child being tortured in a dungeon, right? So it's easy for you to say that the suffering should continue because you're not the one experiencing it. But in terms of the yin and yang, should joy exist at the expense of children being tortured? The answer is no, right? There has to be a limit to what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And suffering is unacceptable. Okay, it's not acceptable, especially when the only trade-off or flip side to it is some shallow privilege and fleeting pleasures, basically, right? Can you name a pleasure in life that justifies a child getting tortured to death? No, basically, right?
Okay, I have one more question, and then I'll leave someone else take the floor. What makes you? Is there anything in life that makes you happy?
Yeah, I mean, loads of stuff. I'm a normal person at the end of the day. I like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and stuff like that. So yeah, loads of things make me happy. But helping sufferers, helping to end suffering, that's what makes me happiest, because that's that's our priority. And the thing is, the reason we feel that way is that empaths, as we're sometimes called by people, we feel the suffering of others as importantly as we do our own. So, for example, if I know that a child is being tortured, their suffering is as urgent to me almost as it is to them. Whereas for most people, they don't care. They look away. It's out of sight, out of mind, and they care about themselves more. But we're people who our suffering isn't more important to us than the suffering of others, if that makes sense. Now, if we had to choose someone else, if we were going to suffer, sorry, yeah, if we were going to suffer like 8 out of 10, and someone else was going to suffer 7 out of 10, then we would probably still prioritize our own suffering. But if someone was going to suffer more than us, then it basically just works out on the mathematics of where more of the suffering is. Okay, we've got some more people looking to join. Let's accept them up. Hello, how's it going?
Yeah, you're right.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, good. Why is your views like so nihilistic? I don't get it.
So the thing is that suffering is too terrible and extreme to allow, and most people they're kind of blind to it, right? They don't think about it, they ignore it, and they live in a bubble where they ignore it essentially. They try not to look at other suffering, they try not to care about it, they don't want to know about it, right? But we know how bad suffering is, we understand that we can do something about it and that we should do something about it. We know that suffering is too terrible and extreme to allow. Children being tortured to death, that's something that we should care about, and it's something that we should put an end to at all costs. There's nothing that justifies or can justify a child being tortured to death, right? So the sufferers take priority, their suffering take priority, and it will always take priority over, selfish pleasures, right? The only people that benefit from existence and forced existence, because nobody asks to be born, the only people that benefit are the lucky ones, right? So the unlucky ones are getting tortured so that the lucky ones can have some very shallow pleasures. It's completely upside down, it's completely backwards, and most people's thinking on this goes about as far as, I don't know, we should just continue the species, for no reason, aimlessly, mindlessly, no matter who gets hurt or how much suffering it causes, right? So that's a completely backwards position. We should be anti-suffering and, for helping all sufferers and victims to be safe from suffering. It is the most important thing.
Yeah, I disagree. I think a lot of your views here are just subjective. And most importantly, when you talk about suffering, I think in some cases it's absolutely necessary. When we're talking about people that harm children, PDFs, things like that, their suffering is both justified and necessary. And I wish them all the world of suffering and more. And I would not like. I don't understand this this modern. I don't know, modern progressives, quote unquote. Everybody's so nihilistic. You talk to most people these days, everyone's either a Marxist or they're a commie. Or, everybody's just got all these weird nihilistic views that we should all just hand in hand walk into oblivion. And there's no solutions to anything. There's no,
But you see,
let's just all unalive ourselves.
The position of, the mainstream position, which is that suffering is acceptable, that's an animalistic and immoral position, right?
But we are animals. This is the thing. This is what I find so amusing. When I debate with people such as yourselves, we like to think of ourselves as so morally superior and that we're such intelligent, intellectual beings. At our primitive roots, we are primitive beings. Homo sapiens, we're great apes. As much as we can act civilized, we are the equivalent of a lion in the desert, in the safari, wearing a suit and tie, sitting at a desk opposite a zebra. Good morning, Steve. Would you like a coffee? The reality of the fact is that lion would maul that zebra, and we are if society collapsed tomorrow,
but speak
if the
for yourself,
rule of law
though, right?
removed, we would eat each other. If society collapsed tomorrow, you would be amazed how quickly we would resort to our primitive roots. We would be, it would be, there'd be none of this, oh, well, we want this and we want that. All these movements would disappear like a fart in the wind, and it would go back to our base of beings of strong conquers weak. And we can go around it all day and say, yes, but Galt, intelligence matters. You would be the smartest man getting your head bashed in by some Neanderthal, because ultimately it will always resort to that.
Yeah. Now, I mean, obviously, if society collapsed, most of the movements would disappear. But I would say that ours would definitely stay on, because the thing is that it's more important than our survival, like I was trying to say earlier. So our priority wouldn't change. It would just, the situation would change, right? But, again, there's really no justification, Galt, for saying that any child should be tortured to death, any animal should be abused, just so that some privileged, selfish people can have fun at their expense.
I just don't follow the argument. I don't. There's the. I mean,
But
what's that film?
Do you agree that no child should be tortured?
There's a film, Equilibrium. It's got. Hang on,
Keanu Reeves. Yeah,
that's better. It's got Christian Bale in it, and society has cured war, and they've got this medication. It removes all human emotion. They don't get angry. They don't get upset. They destroy art, music's banned, everything. They create this idealistic utopia that all these modern day nutcases like to pretend that we're going to live in, and it's just a complete failure. Like, they completely remove emotion, and it shows like how miserable and meaningless the world is. There's no art, there's no stories, and without that pain and that suffering, if we lived in paradise, if every single day we lived in absolute paradise, none of us had to work, we had this absolute like Eden, it'd become miserable, it'd be insufferable. Because there's no balance. You see, Galt, what you're advocating for is an unfair system, because the selfish people thrive in that system. That's effectively what you're saying. But what you're not thinking about is the victims and the sufferers who will get trampled as a result, right? All you care about and all the mainstream cares about
is joy, pleasure, happiness. But no one cares, who gets hurt in the meantime, right? Everyone can just go screw themselves if they're an obstacle to the aimless continued existence of the species, right? But realistically, safety from suffering is far more important than randomly and pointlessly continuing the species.
Yeah, I completely disagree. I mean, we've had cases like this plenty of times. There were a famous case, a guy, a motorbike rider, always gave it the big one, Billy Big Balls. If anything ever happens to me, if I'm ever in a coma, I want to be unalived. Told all his family this. He ended up, unfortunately, he has a motorbike accident. He finds himself in a coma. He can't move, completely paralysed. The only thing he can do is blink.
I agree with that comment. He's not engaging with any of my points, so we are going to move on. Appreciate you coming up, Galt, but you kind of were avoiding all of my questions there and just diving into anecdotes. Let's get back to the queue, see who's there, and get somebody else on. But to sort of kind of, no, they didn't really respond, so what's the point? Hello, how's it going?
Sorry, my English is a bit bad, but it's very interesting your thought of process. I just had some question.
I'm in.
Do you?
Hi, Jim.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Do you believe that ending humanity or like natural extinction will happen easier than fixing the society? Because I mean, both of them seem like equally on the same level, So I wanted to know what could you concretely do, like action of your movement, Like you just have a philosophy, but I don't know if it has any, like, do you have an idea of what you can do?
Yeah, so it's not just a philosophy. Actually, at the movement, we hate philosophy. We think it's a waste of time. Historically, it's been a waste of time. It's never achieved anything. So we are an extremely action-based movement. Our plan is to achieve a suffering-free world. Ethilists are the ones that don't want to do anything, right? Ethilism is about saying that life is bad, but that we shouldn't do anything about it. Extinctionism is saying life is extremely terrible and we should do something about it. We should work to achieve a suffering-free world. So like with any change in society, there's been a movement pushing for that change, pushing to take control, and it's always been a small minority of activists that get out there, that go into the streets and fight for change. So it will be difficult. Our biggest obstacle is human resistance. So, obviously the majority of the population is against ending suffering. They think suffering should continue. So, yeah, that is our biggest obstacle. And that is what we are working on at the pro-extinction movement. So we need to get past that obstacle. And once we have, extinction will be quite easy.
Yeah. But then what? Like, what concretely would happen? Like, would you legalize more, for example, euthanizing, or I don't see like concretely how that would be possible, because to me it seems equally possible to fix the society. I mean, they are both to me impossible. But why do you choose extinction better than trying to fix like the problems of suffering?
Yeah, so there is no way to fix suffering without extinction. There's just far too many ways that it can go wrong. You have too many different species of different animals, and then each individual is also genetically different. So, that you would have to design some sort of genetic modifying virus that spreads to every single animal with no problems, no flaws, no errors, and turns them into invincible, immortal, immune to every disease, safe
could
from
do,
every disaster. You know, it's impossible, right? You would have to.
yeah, but I mean, you can also do like a virus that kill everyone, and I feel like that would be your no. I mean,
Well, the
anyway,
point is that euthanasia is already possible. Curing every disease for every single animal is not possible and probably never will be, right? So people that say that we should improve conditions, and they're basically still advocating for unsafe conditions. As long as life has the risk of suffering, it shouldn't be around. It shouldn't exist. It's unfair. It's cruel. It's wrong. We shouldn't have life in unsafe conditions. If we want to have life, we should hold out for it to be in safe conditions where you have 100% safety from suffering. Now, that doesn't actually exist. It's not a real thing. You know, there is no such thing as a 100% safety from suffering. Now, you could maybe engineer it, create it, and, you know, that's something that we can look into. But we, you know, in the present moment, we have so much suffering, and the only way to deal with it is euthanasia and extinction.
okay, thank you. It's very interesting to listen to you, and it's very interesting. Thank you for responding.
Well, thank you for joining. You should have a look at our website, proextinction.com. You can read all about the website there. We have our frequently asked questions page. We have our manifesto, and we also have links to join our Discord and our WhatsApp at the bottom of the page on the website. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for your good questions, and we are going to move on to another caller. Let's have a look at the queue. We've got Joji Brando, I think. They've been waiting for a while. Hello.
Yeah, man, it's been like 40 minutes.
Yeah, you are a loyal fan. How's it going?
It's good. I want to present to you some arguments and see if you can talk your way around getting out of that without contradicting
Okay.
yourself. Can you do that?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so you're obviously ignoring the pressure of like you don't care about pleasure, joy, meaning of life, any of that, right?
We do care about it, but it's not as important as safety from suffering.
So do you say suffering is bad, right?
Yeah.
So then the opposite, well-being, would be good, right?
Yeah.
So by removing all that, you're not just removing negatives, you're also removing positives. That's not.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, if I go to a casino to gamble my life savings, I'm going to have a lot of fun. I'm going to have a lot of pleasure. But I'm also, you know, risking extreme suffering and extreme problems, right? So, you know, you don't just do something without thinking about the consequences, okay?
But there's a logical flaw in that, right?
What's that?
Like zero suffering with joy isn't necessarily like better. It's just empty. Like most people would agree that like, you know,
What do you mean by
like
zero
life is more
suffering with
preferable to
joy?
non-existence.
What do you mean by zero suffering with joy? You're talking about the heaven example.
No, I'm saying like zero suffering, right? But like zero joy isn't inherently just better than like some suffering with joy. Like you can't tell people what they believe. If someone believes that it's okay to suffer if there's more joy in their life than suffering, and then
But we're not talking about people in their individual lives. You know, people constantly make this mistake where they say, "But I'm fine. I like my life." Okay, but
yeah,
the
but those
point
people
is
would have
that-
to consent
but
to what you're trying to do.
Well, no, they wouldn't.
Yes, they would. Otherwise, here, let me tell you exactly what that would be.
Okay, well, you know, your fantasy of consent has never been the way that the world has worked, ever, okay? Most people don't even consent to the majority of laws that their country has, right?
Wait. Sorry, can I stop you?
Probably actively disagree with them.
I'm not
So
talking about society. I'm talking about the base laws of like existence, right? Like people have agency over their own individual like existence, right?
not everyone,
By
no,
you
not
forcefully
everyone.
removing someone's existence, you're
And in
invading
fact,
that person's right to their own.
most people have zero agency over being forced into existence and into a life that they never asked for and didn't want, right? So if
Yeah,
you're talking about consent, you've got to consider the greatest consent violation of all time, which is forcing someone to exist in unsafe conditions where they're probably going to get tortured.
okay, so you would say that it would be like a mercy killing, right?
Yeah.
But like we have an evolved will to live that's intrinsically in our brains, that's like wired to do so. How are you going to go against what people are biologically like wired to be alive and tell them that they shouldn't be living?
Yeah, well, firstly, we're not telling people that they shouldn't be living. Okay, so you've got that twisted, basically. Realistically, we want humans to exist for thousands of years more, right? So we're not actually threatening anybody that currently lives and
You just want to
exists.
stop suffering, right?
Yeah,
And that falls under, okay, let me here you go. Let me give you this question, right? You got a sick patient, you got a doctor, right? That patient has the disease being suffering, right? If that doctor, aka a human, the only biological entity that has the tools equipped to fix that disease, because we are the only biological markers in existence to be able to intervene in biological things like that, right? So you are effectively going to remove the only answer possible to fixing the thing that would give us joyful life. That's narcissism.
well,
Because you think you're a
the
god
thing is,
and you have the
let's
right.
get this straight first, though. Safety from suffering is more important than some joy, right? Some vague joy for someone in the
It's
future.
more than just joy, though.
Why are you so obsessed? Why do you think that joy is more important than safety?
And then you also said earlier that we have to
Can you answer
operate
the
within
question?
reality, but you have like a
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on, Joji. It's been great. Do better next time, I think, really. Yeah. And let's have someone else on. All right. Let's check the queue. How do you join the movement? That's a great question. Go to proextinction.com, and at the bottom of the page is the link and the button to join our Discord and our WhatsApp group. So if you want to join the movement, there's only two ways to do it, and that is by either joining our Discord or by joining our WhatsApp, and the buttons, the links to both of those are at the bottom of the page on proextinction.com. Is it for animals or humans? It's for both, but humans have to go last. So most likely it's going to look something like this. Animal extinction on Earth, extinction in the universe, as many planets and as much of the universe as possible, and then finally humans. Or, the only exception to that is if we can find robots and AI reliable and dependable enough to do the job for us and remove the need for humanity to continue existing, in which case human extinction might come a lot sooner. But if that doesn't happen, which I tend to feel it probably will, but if we need humans, if we can't remove our dependency on them, then humanity would exist for potentially millions of more years while we deal with cosmic extinction. We have planets to prevent life from developing on. We have, there might be extraplanetary life on asteroids, who knows? And we also have to consider whether or not the universe is cyclical and whether or not it's going to reboot. Like, if our universe started at some point, is it going to end and restart or something? Is that something that we can prevent so that nature doesn't take advantage of all of these innocent animals and torture them again? So in that sense, humans are safe for a long time. We're not asking humans to go extinct. We want humanity to stay strong and healthy and with a large population, because humanity is the vehicle for ending suffering for others. So, but let's answer some questions that we've had from the previous people. What about joy? What about happiness? What about pleasure? Would you really remove all of those things just to end suffering? And the funny thing is, I can hardly say that with a straight face, because just to end suffering makes it sound like suffering isn't important. But suffering is the most important thing, right? If you were bleeding out, you're going to prioritize that over playing a video game. If you're being stabbed by someone, you're going to prioritize dealing with that over buying an ice cream, okay? So extinctionism and the pro-extinction movement actually has very simple and easy to understand ethics and morality. In fact, it's largely the same ethics and morality that everyone uses in their day-to-day life, but just scaled up. So it's wrong to make others suffer, it's wrong to let others suffer. That's just simple day-to-day stuff. But when you scale that up, yeah, it's wrong to let others suffer, it's wrong to let others be forced to exist, born into a life that they didn't want, didn't ask for, and are then, having to deal with all of this imposition of danger, paying bills, finding food, dealing with extreme suffering and disease, right? It's wrong for that to be forced onto any life, and it's our duty to see to it that as little suffering as possible exists in the world. We should be as anti-suffering as possible. There should be no point at which... So, this is actually a good question. At which point should we say enough is enough? I've done my part, I've done my duty. And, basically, the kind of plan for the movement, again, is to have animal extinction on Earth, or at least be working on it, because it may be very difficult and take a long time. But then we will most likely be using AI and robots to deal with universe-wide extinction, to end all suffering and prevent all suffering, right? If you have other planets that have no life, they might develop life one day, and that's going to be in the worst conditions with the worst suffering. So, if we can have robots take care of universe-wide extinction and maybe even animal extinction on Earth, then the question becomes, what will humans have to do, right? I mean, AI is taking our jobs now, and people are already asking, what are we going to do without any purpose? What are we going to do when, there's no more work to do? So the same applies with extinctionism. And if we have robots and AI doing all of the extinction for us, then what are humans going to do? Now, as we were talking about on our podcast today, which if you're interested in seeing is on if you would have to go to YouTube and search Pro Extinction, go on the channel and then go on the live section. That's where our 25 episode podcast is currently. And we were talking about artificial intelligence on it today. So if AI can take over all of the job, but let's say keeps humans around, okay? Why would we need to keep humans around? It's because we have certain advantages that AI probably won't have. We won't get destroyed by solar flares. We don't rely on programming and coding. There's certainly some advantages to having humanity stick around. If the AI goes wrong, if something happens to the AI, humanity can take up the job again of causing extinction, or we can make a new AI, whatever. So let's say that AI is running around the universe doing extinction, it's doing animal extinction on Earth and removing our dependency on animals, so for oxygen and food. What is humanity going to do at this point? Well, if we have no moral obligation except to continue existing for the sake of extinction as a fail-safe almost, then yes, at that point, joy and happiness will be very important. So for all of the people saying that, we don't care about joy, we don't care about happiness, we don't value it, it's actually completely wrong. We find these things extremely important. within context. So yes, this is likely what the pro-extinction movement's plan will be in reality. It's to have an extremely the happiest human population possible, right? Catered to with robots, the best education, no war, right? Peace on Earth. All of the money that we're wasting on the military and border checks and things like that, we would do away with all of that crap. It's extremely inefficient. It's a waste of time, a waste of money. We would have a one world government, and the job would basically be to make humans as happy as possible, because there would be like basically nothing else to do if AI is taking care of the job for us. So actually, we say this all the time, or maybe not enough actually, but the pro-extinction movement is the best thing for all life, including humans, right? We should have peace on Earth. We should work to, brainwash people that are in religions. We should work to educate people, give them critical thinking, to make them more rational, and to improve conditions for humans. So yes, we want the best for humanity. And having extinctionism and the obligation to end suffering actually gives humanity a purpose and a reason to exist. What is the current future for humanity, or what is the current present existence for humanity? It's aimless existence. It's every dog for himself. It's a free for all. It's we glorify unfair systems. Even the other guest that just came on was saying we shouldn't get rid of suffering because I like a world that has a bit of suffering. It makes it a bit more interesting for me, right? So that's pointless. It's wrong. It's unethical. But if we are doing something good, if we are working to end suffering, then that gives us a reason to exist. It gives us purpose. It gives us actual meaning, right? People talk about meaning all the time. But what meaning is there that's any good, that doesn't help sufferers, right? That doesn't enforce a fair world, right? And ethics. So yeah, the pro-extinction movement is actually doing the best for everyone. You wouldn't want to be an animal, right? You definitely wouldn't. They suffer terribly. They can't think properly. Obviously, they can't talk. They can't take care of themselves. So yes, we should get rid of all animals. Nobody would want to live as an animal. It's a terrible life. And, they can't take care of themselves. They're burdens to others, and they suffer the worst. Animals suffer far worse than humans do. So we should just we should have, animal extinction, basically. And we should have, I'm not saying that humans are superior and that we should have human supremacy, but for the people that, are obsessed with joy and happiness continuing, and meaning as well, the pro-extinction movement is basically the best thing for it. So, we're really not bad people. We're not even against humans. We are simply against suffering and unsafe conditions. So, yes, we are saying that if humanity becomes redundant and is still in conditions less than 100% of less than 100% safety, then yes, humanity should go extinct to protect them, to keep them safe from suffering. However, during our lengthy mission to end all suffering in the universe, we may just come across heaven technology, if you will, because the thing is that the requirement for life, for an extinctionist, the requirement for life to exist is that it either has to be useful for ending suffering, right? Humans should keep existing to help end suffering, or it has to be in conditions of, perfect conditions. So we're not talking about 99% safety or 99.9% safety. It would have to be like godlike powers, for levels of safety. It would have to be omniscience, omnipotence tier safety. Anything less than that, and you're risking extreme suffering, you're risking all the, extremely terrible things. So that's our conditions for life. Now, in our mission to end all suffering, we might just come across that heaven tier technology where we can say, right, this meets our standard for life existing. We can have, the zero risk. So if that happens before human extinction, then we'll get to enjoy it. However, it is not the priority, and it is definitely not priority over ending suffering. So we would just have to, the pleasure seekers would simply have to be lucky in that sense, and are relying on us making that heaven technology before there is no longer a need for humanity. Again, humanity needs to exist to help end suffering, and if we have AI doing all of the work for us, we may still need to exist as the fail-safe, as a backup if the AI breaks or goes wrong somehow. So as long as that's necessary, as long as humanity still has a reason to exist, we will. But if we don't make it, to that, if we don't manage to exist for long enough for the technology to develop to the point where there is heaven tier technology, then we will probably make humanity go extinct first and rule out the possibility for that heaven-like pleasure. So in that sense, we have to do the right thing. We're taking a test almost. Are we going to do the right thing? Are we going to earn heaven instead of just going for heaven selfishly and immorally? So for pretty much every perspective, extinctionism is the right thing to do. It's the best thing for all life involved. Anyway, that's been a pretty great stream for today. I know there's people asking to join. I don't really have much time. However, if you want to talk to us, the best way to do that is on Discord. The link is at the bottom of our page, proextinction.com. You'll have access to myself and all of the other activists in the pro-extinction movement. Pretty much 24/7, we're always on Discord, so you can come and talk to us there. If you would like to set up and arrange a debate with myself or another activist from the movement, send me a message, or again, contact us on Discord, and you can do it that way. We love arranging debates, we're happy to do it, and we particularly enjoy doing long debates on YouTube that last an hour or 2 hours with just one person. So if that's something you're interested in, then contact us and let us know. But in the meantime, join the movement, help us fight against suffering, help us protect animals, help us protect all life from the worst things that exist and can exist, right? Within existence is the potential for unlimited suffering and unlimited severity of suffering, especially if you think of those who are worst off and the animals that are worst off from this system. It's actually quite hard to imagine that, right? It's easy to imagine someone with cancer, but if I said, I want you to imagine the worst life that's ever existed, in my opinion, it's sort of beyond comprehension and beyond imagination. But but they still deserve the moral consideration despite it being difficult to imagine. So, especially when you consider the worst suffering in the world and how pervasive it is, yes, extinction is the right thing to do. Ending suffering is the right thing to do. It's the best way to protect life from the nightmares and terrors of existence, basically. From torture, from hell-like suffering. So help us stand up for the victims, fight for them, and fight for a suffering-free world. That's what we're doing. We are an action-based movement, and that means taking action, spreading the message, growing the movement, and working on solutions for total extinction. The biggest problem, again, is humans resisting us, the mainstream status quo resistance to extinction. So that's what we're working on solving, and we have more reason than anyone else to do it. We have billions of years of virtually infinite victims relying on us, right? They are quite literally depending on us to do it. Victims of future torture and suffering are depending directly on us because we are the only ones that are coming to help them, right? And you can say, yeah, but 100 years from now we'll have probably cured loads of diseases. They're not relying on you. Okay, even if conditions improve, the ones that will suffer, they are relying on us, okay? And their suffering is far more important than anyone's pleasure. So even if there's just one individual being tortured, that's wrong, and their safety is more important than the selfish fun of some privileged people, right? Who are willing to condemn others to suffer so that they can have pleasure. No. We won't prioritize joy and happiness over suffering. We will prioritize safety from suffering and safety from forced existence and being forced into a body that you didn't ask for, a life that you didn't ask for and that you didn't want. So help us fight for the end of all suffering on Earth, for humans and for the entire universe, and basically for optimal conditions for life. That's what we should do, and anything else is selfish and wrong and condemns innocents to suffer unfairly and needlessly, right? Wrongly. So I might be streaming tomorrow. I'm not sure yet. I've put out quite a few videos today, so check out my channel, follow me, and join me on the next stream. And one last time, for everyone who has questions, you can either join our Discord. That's the best way to ask us questions. You have access to me and the entire team 24/7 typing. And yeah, that's it really. I was going to say something else, but I forget it now. Join us on Discord if you want your questions answered, or wait for my next live stream, which might be tomorrow. I've also put out a load of videos today. So we're not promoting suicide, JB. We are directly and strictly against suicide. So get your facts straight. We want humans to be happy and healthy and to help end suffering for animals and all life, including humans. All right, thank you very much, everyone. And